let's start with Oregon here. And kind of big picture, it may need to be said. Does Dan Lanning have a big game problem yet at Oregon? I think he's a really good coach. I think he's raised the ceiling to national championship level of that place. But he's 0-3 against Washington. Got blown out by Georgia in his first game. He'll win you the games against teams ranked outside the top 10. But does he need this game to kind of stop that narrative from forming? What do you think?
I think it's still kind of too early to say like he has a big game problem. The Georgia game, I just think they were outmatched by Georgia. That was a great Georgia team that went undefeated.
Yeah.
Won the national title. And I think that the Washington games are what people point to. Those are 3-point losses that I think really could have gone either way. I think there was some questionable fourth down decisions that he made in that game. I remember the second game they lost to Washington, like right before the half, he could have kicked a field goal instead of going for it on 4th and goal. And
I covered that game.
Yeah, if you kick that field goal, then you're tied at the end of the game, and you're probably going to overtime. And I think in both instances, there was times where Oregon could have salted the game away, and the running back slipped. Like there was that fourth down in the first game they played where the running back slipped, and then the second game where I think they had a third or fourth down and the running back fell. It's like, does that mean Dan Lanning can't win a big game because his running back tripped on a crucial third or fourth and short? Like, I don't think so. I think Ohio State's just a better team and has a better roster than them right now. So if they lose this game, I wouldn't necessarily be like, oh man, Dan Lanning can't win a big game. It's just really unfortunate circumstances that have led him to this point.
Yeah, I mean, those fourth down calls too. The second one, the one at Washington last year, I covered that game. And I think it was a good decision. And even though he didn't get it, Washington scores a touchdown. Oregon comes back and misses a field goal that would have sent the game to Oregon. Like, I think he's sometimes a little too aggressive on fourth downs, but most of the decisions he makes are good decisions. They just haven't made the play, and they continue to not get that play. I'm with you. Like, I don't think he has a big game problem. But if you lose this game at home, I do think you're going to see people to start saying that. Not that it impacts him or that he cares or anything like that, but like, that is the thing. He's supposed to be different than Mario Cristobal. Mario Cristobal won a Pac-12 championship, lost in a Fiesta Bowl. So Oregon's trying to get higher than where they were with Mario Cristobal, and I think Dan Lanning can get him there. I think he's recruiting at an unbelievable level, but keep an eye on that if people start saying that after the game. So this Oregon offense, I covered the Oregon State game earlier this year. You've watched the Ducks quite a bit. Dillon Gabriel, the quarterback, he is suddenly becoming a red zone turnover machine. He had 2 interceptions against Michigan State, had another one against UCLA. He is completing 79% of his passes, which is best in the country, but he's 87th in yards per completion. It feels like they've just plugged him into the offense that Bo Nix ran, and they're continuing that. And the results have been kind of mixed. How do you feel about kind of how this offense has looked? And I guess Gabriel specifically.
Yeah, I agree with you. When I was watching the first half against Michigan State the other day, I was like, this has like the makings of the Bo Nix offense, but it's not the same. It just doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel as crisp or like or in as much of a rhythm as that offense did. They'll get big plays with Evan Stewart and Trayshawn Holden and Tez Johnson and things like that, but it just doesn't feel like they're rolling the same way. And watching Oregon the past 2 years and seeing like once their offense had a rhythm and was really going, it was like, it just felt like a tidal wave that was like impossible to stop.
Yeah. That's what it felt like in Corvallis this year, but it's the only time we've really seen that. Like they couldn't run the ball the first couple of weeks. Boise State, Idaho, it's gotten better since then. They average, I think, 7.5 yards per carry against Oregon State, over 5 yards against Michigan State. I think that center change that they made really helped the running game, but it does feel a bit inconsistent.
Yeah, it feels more disjointed than what it has been the past 2 years, because I just think when Oregon, they were just poured on the past 2 years, and they just had like, you would have thought like they would have done that against UCLA. They scored 35 points, which is a good number, but like you expect them to score like 40, 45. And then, last week they scored 30 against Michigan State. So I just think it it hasn't seemed as smooth as everyone thought it was going to be.
And that was a 31-0 game that I think became 31-7, I think by the end, or 31-10, I don't remember. So second half was, and they were up big, but it has been a bit clunky. And Gabriel is somebody at Oklahoma, at UCF, he was really good at throwing the deep ball.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like they're doing that as much. And even when they do, it's not totally there. I mean, there was one catch against Michigan State where the receiver was like laying down and caught it on his back. So like it's just kind of been disjointed, like you said. Ohio State, on the other hand, their offense has been rolling. Chip Kelly is the offense coordinator. They're up to more than 200 rushing yards per game, more than 6 yards per carry. Haven't played anybody great, but they did run the ball really well against Iowa. What do you think about what Ohio State's done? And do you think Oregon's defense has the horses to try to slow that down?
Yeah, I think that's the big question coming into this game. Like, Oregon only had 7 points at half against Iowa. And I was like, oh man, like, what's going on? Will Howard I know he had at least one pick in the first half. Oh man, like, what's going on here? Then obviously their talent kind of overwhelmed Jeremiah Smith, overwhelmed Iowa in the second half. And that's kind of what you expected from Ohio State this year. I think it'll be really interesting to see how they match up with Oregon's defense. Oregon's defense, they gave up the 34 points to Boise. They gave up some trick plays to Idaho. But since then, they haven't played any great offenses since then. But I think they've handled their business against the offenses they have played, and they've made bad offenses look bad, which is all you can ask for so far. So to me, like, I haven't seen Oregon's defense be tested in a while, and I haven't seen like Ohio State really be tested. So like, I feel like we're going to learn a lot about each side of the ball in this game. I think I want to watch just the trenches and see how Ohio State's offensive line, because that was a big question I had coming into the season, was like, how's Ohio State, how's their offensive line going to look? I know like Justin Fry's kind of been a source of frustration for Ohio State fans with the way they've recruited the offensive line. And that was like a weakness last year. And then Oregon this year, they kind of beefed up the defensive line in the portal. But we've obviously seen them be run on before against Boise and stuff like that. So I kind of want to see how this matchup goes. And I think that'll obviously go a long way in determining the game, to see if they can put pressure on Will Howard. We'll have to stop the run too, with Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson and stuff like that. So there's a lot of pressure on Oregon's defensive line this week.
Yeah, Oregon is 48th in rushing yards per carry allowed, but Ashton Genty is a big reason for that. Boise State averaged 6.7 yards per carry in that game. Among the other games, 3 of the other 4 games have been below 4 yards per carry. The last 2 weeks, actually, Oregon is held to less than 2 yards per carry. I'm interested in Oregon's pass rush, because they've got some really good edge rushers. There's some guys that they brought in, like you said. And Ohio State's offensive line, the tackles are the question mark. That was the question coming in. A lot of coaches have said, I don't think those tackles are really good. So are you going to be able to get pressure on Will Howard? Because Michigan State was kind of able to do that 2 weeks ago when they played, and it took a minute for Ohio State to get going in that game. And I think that's going to be really interesting. So keys to the game as we wrap up, thoughts on this game. For Oregon to win, what do you think is the most important thing for them?
I think they're going to have to, I know it sounds kind of weird because Ohio State has Jeremiah Smith, but I think you're going to need to stop the run and force like Will Howard to beat you. Because Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson are so good, that you kind of need to try to take something away from Ohio State. And Chip Kelly is such a good designer of the run game. And like, I know people criticized him a lot at UCLA, but it was fun seeing what he was drawing up with tight ends and running backs and kind of out leveraging the defense while he was at UCLA. And now that he has much more talent at Ohio State, that's kind of something you need to take away. And I think they'll have to force kind of Will Howard to beat them through the air if they can. I think that's kind of their best path toward winning the game. Yeah,
I'm kind of going the other way. I think Oregon, the pass rush. I think they got to get to Will Howard and shut down the pass rush and hope enough guys can stop the run. Otherwise, Oregon is 11th in sacks per game. Don't let it get out to Jeremiah Smith, even if he only gets one hand on the ball. You know he's going to come down with that ball. Keys for the Ohio State to win this game. I think it's preventing the big plays. That's something Oregon has struggled to get. When Oregon is at its best, that's what it's getting. Big plays in the run game, big plays in the passing game. Make them dink and dunk down the field. And that's my key for Ohio State. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's kind of in line with what you said, just protecting Will Howard and making sure like Mateo Uyunglele and Jordan Birch can wreck the game. They can make game-changing plays. I think that's something they're going to have to protect Will Howard from, getting hit by that defensive line and not making any critical mistakes. Because if they avoid, sounds simple to say, but if they avoid mistakes, then they should be fine in this one. I think they're just a better team than Oregon, and if they play mistake-free football, I think they should win by like 10, 14 points or something.